Hello. This video is for the WSU Classroom Use Visualization and will include a discussion of the data preparations using Tableau Prep. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Before talking about the actual preparation of the data, let's talk a little bit about what I'd like the visualization to look like. So here is what the visualization should look like. I have on the y-axis here the time slots, and then on the x-axis I have the days of the week, and the intensity here with the red color. If it's a more intense red, that means that that time slot is being used more than, say, the white time slots. So the white time slots here, so Monday from, this would be 2 to 3 o'clock, or excuse me, 3 to 4 o'clock, that we don't have any classroom use there on Mondays from 3 to 4 o'clock. On the other hand, from 1 to 2 o'clock, it looks like there are lots of classrooms being used here because the color is somewhat fairly dark there. So in creating this visualization, I'm going to consider 30-minute time slots as my different rows here. The reason I'm using 30-minute time slots is because on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, a lot of our classes are 1 hour long, but on Tuesday, Thursdays, they're 1.5 hours long. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the 30 minutes as my rows there. So every 30 minutes, I'm going to have a box. I also have 5 columns for the 5 days of the week here. Okay, so I'm going to need to label these. The row IDs, I'm just going to go from 1 to 16 to identify the different rows. And then obviously the 5 days of the week here. I'm not going to worry about any Saturday or Sunday classes. So how do I connect my data to this visualization, or what kind of processing needs to be done? We can see that the data, this is an example row out of the data set. It's telling me what classroom, what day it is, and then what time it is. It has other information as well that we're not going to end up using. So this classroom is being used from 10 to 11 on a Monday. So I need to indicate that I have classroom use here in this row ID 5 and also row ID 6. And that will be for Monday. Now this class also runs Wednesday and Fridays, but that information is later in the data set. Okay, so here down below I have a Wednesday. It's also busy from that 10 to 11 slot. So what I need the data processing to do is I need to check whether or not this class, okay, is being used not just for the 10 to 11, but I'm going to do it for all of the time slots. In order to accomplish that, I'm going to end up using a full outer join. So I'm going to end up joining 2 tables, the classroom data and then also a table that contains information about the 16 time slots. Okay, what I've done to make life a little easier for us is to identify some data processing steps, and these would be steps that would need to be done irregardless of what software you're using. So for example, I want to filter out the final exams out of the instructor field. I want to make sure there's no classes on Saturdays or Sundays. I have about 9 steps it looks like here, and we're going to do these steps using Tableau Prep. Okay. So let's go ahead and bring the data into Tableau Prep and get started with our first data processing. The data that I want to bring in first is just the CSV file that has the classroom use. So this is available on our course website. Again, here's that first class at 10 to 11 o'clock on Mondays, it looks like. So I want to bring this into Tableau Prep. What I need to do inside of Tableau Prep is to open this up. Maybe one thing before I get into actually doing it is, where do I find Tableau Prep? If you go to the software center that is available on Winona State's campus, Tableau Prep is one of the software packages that you can download. So right here is Tableau Prep. We also have Tableau Desktop, which we will be using in the future to create visualizations. So the prep was created, that package was created just to help do the data preparation steps. Okay, so I've downloaded that, I've opened it, and I want to make a connection to my data set. I'm going to select Connect to Data. I'm going to use a text file, so a CSV file is a text file. Pick that text file up, and what Tableau Prep is going to do is load that file or bring that file in. You can see some information about that. It's telling me the different fields here, some sample values that were read in for that. Up here across my, what they call the flow pane, so I'm going to end up creating kind of a set of processes that I'm going to use, and that's just going to start moving across the screen as I do those. So for example, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is filter out, okay, the final exam. So let's show you how to do that. That's a cleaning step. So from the little plus button here, I'm going to select clean step. Across here, I have the different fields, and it's giving me some sample values for each of those fields. Down below here, I got a sample of the data that's present in this table. I can change these views here. Up here, these toggles allow me to change those views. So if I just want to look at the data, I can select that one there. You can see that I got some final exams here that I need to take out, and those are going to be in the instructor field. So the final exams are identified with the instructor field. So to apply a filter, what I'm going to do is go to the instructor field here. Again, I'm toggling between these, so it's nice to be able to see what's going on with the different variables. The three little dots here hanging off the instructor field, I'm going to select filter, and then I'm going to do selected values. And what that's going to allow me to do is identify which instructors you want me to keep, or which instructors do you want me to exclude. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these, except for I want to deselect final exam. And I want you to pay attention what happens over here on the left side once I do that. So if I deselect final exam is going to disappear from this list. Okay? So no longer is final exam available. So I've filtered that out. I should have shown you this a moment ago, but there were 32 unique values now. Before there were 33 values. So let's go ahead and say done here. Right here in this little pane here, I have a changes, which I want you to pay attention to that, because that is going to identify what changes have been made to this data set through the cleaning step. Okay, so as I do my cleaning, I can see what changes have been made here. Again, that pane is hiding right under here, or excuse me, to the left of these field descriptions. I can say changes here. I can probably hide the connection stuff to give us a little more room. All right, so I've accomplished the first thing. Let's go ahead and bring my checklist back over here. I've accomplished the first thing there. I want to make sure I don't have any Saturdays. And then also I'm going to move right into creating new fields for the start time and end time. Okay, so let's go to day of week and make sure I don't have any Saturdays or Sundays, which I don't here, so I don't have to worry about that. Next, I want to create a field for start time and end time. What I'm going to end up having to do eventually is check to see if this, say the third time, which is 900, I guess, whether or not this class is taking place at the 900 or 9 o'clock row, the 9 to 9:30 row. Now it's not. Okay, it's only happening from the 10 to 10:50 rows, excuse me. All right, so I'm going to have to pull this start time and end time apart in order to do that if statement that will allow me to do that checking. So I'm going to need to split this into the two elements, the start time and the end time. Now, if I was using a spreadsheet or jump, I could use a left or right function would allow me to do this, but Tableau Prep has split already built in for me, so it's going to split these values. The structure here for this is very clean. I have 4, then I have a dash, and then I have 4 more characters. Okay, so I'm going to be able to use an automatic split on that. I can also specify a custom split, which you might have to do if your data is a little bit, if it's not as clean as what I have here for time. So an automatic split, let's go ahead and click that. And what's going to happen then is it's going to create two new fields in my data set. The first is going to be the start time and the second is going to be the end time. I can rename those real easily. So if I just double click in there, this is going to be start time. And then here I'm going to select end time. So I can rename those real easily so they're more informative. Notice that these changes are happening as I'm going down through here. Here's a rename field for start time. Here's a rename field for end time. If you want to change the order of these, so maybe I want the start time and the end time to be over on the very right of the data set, I can do that. I can just pick those up and drag those over, and now the start and end time will be way over on the right of this data. I don't need things like dates, so if I want to clean some of this up, I can. I'm not going to use that date information. So again, from my three little dots here in the date field, I can just say remove. I'm not going to use section anymore, so I can remove that out. Instructor, I think that's all right. We'll leave some of the rest of that information in there. So you can kind of reduce or select some of those columns to be deleted out. Okay, so I think I'm pretty good there. Let's go check. Oh, I'm going to need to make sure. Let's go back to our data prep steps here. Bring it over in here. So I did that, created the new variables. I want to make sure that all of my classes are between 8 and 4 here. So I don't want anything past 4 p.m. and I don't want anything before 8 a.m. So let's do a filter on those. I think I'm going to have to take some out of there. So now I want to work with start time. Do I have anything starting before 8 a.m.? I do not. So again, this is giving me that list. How about the end time? I do have a couple here that are after 4 o'clock. So 4 o'clock is going to be 1600. So I want to take those out. So again, I'm going to apply a filter. I can do that with selected values. I'm going to select them all again. And then I'm just going to take out those two. At 1650 would be 4:50 in the afternoon. This would be 4:20 in the afternoon. So I want to stop here at 3:50 in the afternoon. Okay. Again, that is just getting added to all the changes that are happening. So you can see that up here, up above there. I think the only other thing that I need to do here, so I've done that. The next thing is create a merge field for the full join, and what I need for that is just a column of ones. So let's go ahead and do that in this file. And how I get that done is, so let's go back here. How I get that done is creating a calculated field. So create calculated field is the same thing as adding a column into or a field into my data set. This would be akin to, if you're using R, that would be akin to using a mutate. Okay, so create a calculated field. Now this calculated field is going to be really easy. I'm just going to call this merge ID. So I'm going to use it when I do my merging, and it's only going to be a value of 1. So it's just a value of 1s all the way down there. Again, the new variables are created here on the left. If you want to drag those back over to the other side, you can do that. So now I have that there. Again, how many steps do I have in the processing here? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps that were done here, 9 changes that were made to that data. You can give that new data, if you want, a name up here. So maybe I'll call this final classroom data or something. Give it something that's somewhat informative there. Okay. Now what I need to do is to get the time slot table, make sure that it has a column of 1s, and then I'm going to do a full outer join here. So I need to make another connection here. So let's go back to my connections pane here. I'm going to make another connection to a text file again, and I'm going to be picking up that time slot data. So this has, again, what that looks like here. Let me just pull that over. This is what it looks like in Excel. Just has the rows, the time labels that I have, and then that merge ID column I'm going to need as well. So that's what this data looks like. Now to merge this data, or to complete my full outer join, what I'm going to do is just pick up the time slot data and bring it over the top of my cleaned up data, okay, for the classrooms. So this one off to the right. And when I do that, you can see that I can either do a union or I can do a join. So again, I'm left clicking, just dragging that up here. I can do a join if I want. That's what I want to do, is a full outer join. So let's bring this up and bring it on to the join. You can see that it's starting to indicate in my flow pane up here how that is working. It's bringing the classroom data in with the time data here. So I can rename that. That's the time slot data. I'm bringing the time slot data into the classroom data here. Now, back onto the join here. I'm in this panel here. I can see that I'm using the merge ID in both of those columns to complete this join. Underneath that, I have the join type. I want to make sure that I'm doing a full outer join, and I'm just going to hold the control button down to do that. That's going to allow me to create all combinations of both of those sets of rows in those tables. Down below, it's giving you some information about that join. My classroom data had 238 rows in it. My time slot data had 16 rows. If you multiply those together, I get those 3,800 rows. This is giving me an indication of what that looks like over here. Okay, so I can see some of that over here. Now, what is actually happening, let me just look at the data for a moment. What's actually happening here is that that first classroom, or that first class, which was a 10 to 11, it was a Stat 210 class, I'm actually getting 16 copies of that. All right, now why I'm getting 16 copies of that is because now I have one for every single time label, or every single row ID here. So you can see I have 16 down to 1. That's giving me that information for every single time label. So what happened there when I did that full outer join is that all of the rows in the classroom data set were merged with every row in the time slot data, which means I just get 16 copies of this. Now, the reason I did that is because I'm now going to just do an if statement to check to see if the time label is between the start time and the end time. And if it is, I'm going to give it a 1 with my if statement. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it as a 0. So that's going to be how I'm going to indicate whether or not this class is occurring during that particular row ID on my visualization. All right, so some of this information I don't need. Merge ID I don't need anymore, so I can get rid of that one. Times, let's go ahead. I need this merge ID. I can get rid of that one, just kind of cleaning things up here. You can see the changes here that are being done. So I did a join, then I did a remove. I think I'm ready to do my calculated field. So my if statement I'm going to do. One thing that I'm going to want to do is make sure that the data types are the same. So this little information here, the ABC, is telling me that this type is a string. The same for the end time, whereas my time label is number whole here. So before I build my if statement, I want to make sure that they're all three of the same type, so Tableau Prep does not get confused. So from here, I can just left click and say, treat this as a number whole. That should show up now. Let's go over here. There's start time, treat it as a number whole here. Here's my end time. I want to treat that as a number whole. For some reason, these merge IDs came back. I think I can just get those out of there again. It's easy enough to do. Okay. So now the start time here is number whole, the end time is number whole, and the time label is number whole. So let's go ahead and do another calculated field, which is going to be that if statement. Again, that if statement is just checking to see if this slot, this 8 o'clock slot, okay, whether or not this class, excuse me, is in that 8 o'clock slot or not. So I just need an indicator variable to do that. And I'm going to do that with an if statement. All right, so I'm back here. I'm on my joined table. I could call this, if I wanted, final data, so I can double click on that. Final data after the join, if I want to name it. I'm going to end up creating a calculated field here, and I'm going to call this just a count. This is going to be used to create the counts. It's going to be an if statement, so just if. Let's see here. I'm going to need, what are my different fields in this thing? Can I get those easily? Let's just drop this for a minute. Let's come over here. I got time label and then start time and end time. So let's go ahead and create my if statement now. So this is going to be count if time label. So Tableau Prep uses tab complete. If time label is bigger than or equal to the start time, and the time label is less than or equal to the end time. So that is going to ensure that that class is happening during that time slot. So if, then I'm going to give it a 1, else I'm going to give it a 0. Okay, so if this is true, if the class is being offered at that particular time label or in that particular row, it's going to be indicated by a 1, otherwise it's going to be indicated by a 0. Now you need to have these if statements exactly correct. So if I don't provide an else, down here in the bottom it's going to say you have an error. Okay, it's telling me I have some sort of error here. So it is true that Tableau and Tableau Prep are kind of picky in terms of having your calculated fields exactly as needed. All right, this looks like it's going to run. It says calculation is valid, so let's apply and save. Here's that new column that's being created. Now let's look. This class was being offered at the 10 to 11 slot, 10 to 11 slot. So I should have a 1 here in row 5 and in row 6. Okay, so 5 and 6 should have a 1 in it, and they indeed do. It might be easier to drag count over at the end again like we have been doing, so I can see that a little easier. Now let's look at that quickly. All the way over here. The 1 is happening there at 5 and 6. Now somewhere else down here in the bottom, it's picking up the Wednesday and the Friday same time slot. All right, that does it. I have my data joined, and now I have this if statement done. So if we go to our data preparation steps, the only thing that I have left to do now is to actually get the counts for the day of the week and the IDs, row IDs. Now to get those, what I'm going to want to do is a pivot or an aggregate, excuse me. Okay, so off of my final data here, I want to do an aggregation step. And this is going to behave, wait a minute. Let's back up. I want to delete that off. I want to take here and I want to aggregate. I might have to send that to output first before I do that. Let's go ahead and try that. Push it to output here. So what that does is just creates that table, and now can I aggregate? Oh. Sorry, I needed to be under settings here, under changes. So when I did the aggregation, that was correct. Let me do that one more time for you. So what was happening there is when I did aggregate, it was under changes there and it wasn't showing me my fields. So here I do have my fields available. And what I need to do here is just get my tallies for the day of the week. So I'm going to bring that across into my grouping. And then I have my row ID or my time label. Doesn't matter which one of those you're using. And I want to bring the count, which contain that 0 or 1, into the fields, aggregation fields. The default here is to sum these. Okay, and that's what I want to do. I just want to know how many or how often Thursdays at noon is the classroom being used, and that's 7 here, 7 times in the building. This is for Gildemeister. Fridays that'd be 1 o'clock, it's being used 10 times. All right. So now what I can do so this is kind of a pivot table idea. It's called an aggregation here in Tableau Prep. Now what I can do is output that. Okay. And it's going to ask me kind of some down here in the save output or the output pane here. I want to save it to a file. I want to make sure and push it over into the folder that I want it into. So let's go ahead and do that quick. DSI 310 this year, Classroom Use, Tableau. It's going to be called Summaries maybe. I want to save this as a CSV file. And now when I run that, saying that I have errors in that. Let's just see if it created that file or not. So, did not create that file. Saying that I have errors here and it's cannot find merge ID. So I have to go back here, and on the changes step I'm going to want to take that remove field out of there. So I took those out of there, and because I took those out of there, it wasn't able to complete that merge. So now that should work. I have something called summaries now. And what that looks like here is I have my day of the week available to me. I have my time label, and then those tallies or counts. So I could sort those if I wanted to make that a little bit easier to read. So I want to sort by the day of the week, and then I also want to sort by the time labels. It is going to do Friday first here, but if we go down to Monday, you can see that I have my data for Monday here. So Monday, 8 o'clock, got used 5 times. Remember, Monday at noon, it wasn't used at all. It was white, so that looks like it's correct. It's 0 there. And then the 3 to 4 o'clock, it's also got some zeros in there. Again, this is for Monday, 3 to 4 o'clock. Doesn't have any. So this is the information. This data right here is the information that I needed in order to create this visualization that I have here. So those tallies or counts are provided to me now in this summaries file. So that's for Monday. I have Tuesday down here and the rest of the days of the week as well. Okay, that does it then in terms of creating or preparing the data using Tableau Prep. Thanks for listening.